Welcome to Guest of the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. This week's guest setlist curator is Chef Michael Cimarusti. Michael is a James Beard Award winner and co-owner of Providence in Los Angeles, which in 2025 earned 3 Michelin stars. It also carries a green star for sustainability. Michael is also chef and partner at Connie Ted's in West Hollywood, which I've been to probably 25 times. And he trained at Spago, Cirque, and Water Grill after graduating from Culinary Institute of America. He's one of the chef judges on America's Culinary Cup, which is midway through its first season on CBS and Paramount Plus. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Mike. It's a real pleasure to be here. Huge fan of the show, as you know.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for being here. All right, here's how the game works. We'll play the first part of a Grateful Dead live track, and each contestant will use the messaging system to silently guess which year the performance is from. Contestants who are all in a video conference together can message in the guesses at any time during the clip or in the 10 seconds after it concludes. Our 3 contestants will hear 5 tracks, and whoever is the least number of years off in aggregate wins and continues on to next week. Our returning champ, Adam, has abdicated his throne, so we'll meet 3 new Deadheads in a moment. But first, without further ado, the Grateful Dead.
Now talk to me. We're guilty of the same old thing. Thinking a lot about this place and forgetting the love we bring.
The guesses are in. It was Althea at the Oakland Coliseum Arena in Oakland, California on December 15th, 1986. Michael, tell us about that Althea.
I chose Althea because it's one of my favorite songs. My first ever dog was named Althea. My first show was the spring of 84. And so I'd already really been into the band. This is actually the very first show that the Dead played after Jerry came out of his diabetic coma. And I just thought the playing was brilliant. The recording is brilliant. And I just think, what a significant event this was that Jerry fought back from that diabetic coma and was able to, relearn literally everything, including how to play the guitar, and was able to get on stage and perform, at this level is just astounding, and then continue for another 9 years. So anyway, significant show, and I love this version.
Thank you, Michael. Well, Tom, guess 1990 was 4 years off, and he was closest. Tom is 36 from Tamales, California. What were you hearing, Tom?
This is actually a lesson of you should stick with your gut, because the first year in my mind was actually 87. And you're just pulling at straws and trying to hear what you hear and also what you don't hear. So for me, the thing that I was kind of fixated on most was the tiredness and the witheredness of Jerry's voice. I actually have listened to this 86 show, his first post-coma, just in the last couple months. So it did hit sort of like this feels familiar, but I was struggling on the keys. But great pick. I love an Althea. It's a top 5 track for me. And I do listen to, with being here on the West Coast, I listen to a lot of Greek shows, a lot of those Oakland Coliseum shows. I love that outdoor sound in that late 80s, early 90s era. So good pick. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Tom. So next closest was Matt, who guessed 1981. And Drane guessed 1980, 6 years off. So Matt is 55 from Queens. Tell us, Matt, what were you hearing?
I was sure that it was one of the very early Altheas, and it was Because of Brent. And there was a certain tone that he was making, like it sounds like bells to me. I knew that it wasn't going to be something late 80s or early 90s because of the tempo very specifically. So I'm not going to be too hard on myself for getting it wrong.
Good. Drane is 52 from Gainesville, Georgia, 1980.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, Brent is there, but Brent starts early in '79, right? So I'm thinking it's like fall of '79, maybe early '80, maybe '81. I mean, I don't think I would have guessed past '81, honestly.
Matt has 5, Tom has 4, Drane has 6. Let's hear Michael's second choice.
Spanish lady come to me, she lays on me this rug. Rainbows spiral round and round, they tremble then explode. That's the smoking crater of my mind, I like to blown away. He came round and butted me for smiling on a cloudy day. I've been coming around and around. I've been around and around.
It was a cryptical envelopment into the other one at Low Library Plaza in Columbia University, New York, on May 3rd, 1968. Michael, tell us about that one. It was great.
Most of these picks are something that I have like a personal attachment to. And the reason I chose this is my father was doing postdoctorate work at Columbia at the time, and he was stuck in the science building while protests were going on. This performance like coincided with this huge student takeover at Columbia University. It had to do with a couple of things. One of them had to do with them, Columbia wanting to build a gym in what was essentially Harlem and create a separate entrance for people that actually lived in Harlem and were not students. And so they called that GM Crow, GYM Crow. So that was part of the protest. And then the other part of the protest was, of course, the Columbia's university connections to the Vietnam War. And this performance happened while all that was going on, which I think is incredible and speaks also to the Grateful Dead's role in the greater culture and the fact that they were there at so many incredibly important times in our, in the history of the United States and, late 60s and throughout the 70s and 80s. So, and of course, the other one is one of my favorite songs and always has been. And every time I ever heard it played in the 80s, just was completely mind-blowing.
Cryptical envelopment kind of came and went, even though people liked it. How do you know when a dish is ready to be set aside despite diners liking it?
Phil had this saying, right, which everybody knows, never play the same thing once. And of course, in the restaurant industry, you can't do that. In a restaurant where you're striving for consistency, especially at the level that we cook at, consistency is everything. So that you gotta like really hone in on every single little detail. But what I take to heart out of Phil saying that is the idea that your work is never really done and that there's always something else out there. And so that is what pushes me to change and keep the restaurant evolving and keep pushing the level of creativity and collaboration. And that's what's kept the restaurant successful for the past 20 years. And so much of that ethos I think I adopted from the Dead themselves.
Is it painful though?
No, not at all. It isn't, because again, like, it's all about creativity, and that process of creativity and involving others in that process is a really inspiring thing. And especially me as somebody at my age, a chef at my age, like getting to work with young, highly inspired, talented cooks. I find it incredibly inspirational, and I find them like kind of teaching me back up the ladder. You know what I mean? I think you could draw parallels with that in music. You see in the latter years, Bob and members of the Dead, ex-members of the Dead, collaborated with everyone from the younger generation, like from all different genres of music. And I feel like, the inspiration that they provided to the younger generations is now kind of like, coming back to them, and these younger artists want to work with them and stand by their side and glean whatever they can from them. I kind of feel like that same energy in the kitchen at times.
But does the kitchen, like a band with Jerry, who didn't love being in charge, but do you think that creativity relies on someone ultimately being the head honcho and being the arbiter of whether something's good or not?
To a degree, but I also believe that, like, I know that being surrounded by creative people and talented people, makes the work that we do that much better. You cannot do it alone. In the kitchen we have a team of about 18 cooks, and anybody that has a great idea is certainly welcome to share it. And if it finds its way on a menu, then so be it. If it's good enough to be on our menu, then I think that's a wonderful thing. As a young cook, I was, when I was working for other people, at times allowed to contribute to the menu, and it was I found it incredibly fulfilling. Like, I think, like anything else, like creativity is a muscle, and you have to be able to flex it. You have to be able to, constantly use it in order to stay well toned. And it's true of music. It's true of food. It's true of any art form, or any craft, really, for that matter.
Is cooking an art form or a craft?
I go back and forth about that. Personally, I consider myself a craftsman. I know that there are people that in this field that are more artists than craftsmen. But personally, I consider myself a craftsman, and it's something I take a lot of pride in. The fact that I, been working with my hands for 30, whatever, ever since I was really 18 years old.
Thanks, Michael. Matt got it exactly 1968. Nice pull, Matt. What were you hearing? What were you deciding between?
It was either going to be 69 or 68, and I feel like I could hear TC, and it was like a Hail Mary, because I feel like, okay, it could have easily just as easily been a 69. And I guess I knew that it wasn't that early either, that they already were comfortable with ripping through the song, so.
Drane guessed 1969. He was 1 year off. I mean, that's a good guess. But tell us.
I mean, I was like, is it 68? I almost said it, and then I was like, couldn't all of a sudden hear Mickey, and I was like, could it be 70? I'll split the difference and go 69.
Playing the game. And Tom, 1970.
The fullness of sound and the delivery of the vocals had me in that 70s camp. But again, I started working my way backwards. The more and more organ I heard, and just the way that sort of the sound moved in collaboration with each other, it was a lesson to, again, go earlier and more into that primal area, which again is a lot of my sort of go-to listening and the shows that I enjoy most, just the character that they have. So I sort of put this in the Bear's Choice, Owsley camp of that like late 69, 70 world that is also another favorite of mine. So,
Tom, how'd you get into the Dead?
Yeah, sure. I guess the hook that set in my mouth was when I was in high school. I was about 15 years old, and I was growing up in rural York County, Pennsylvania. So there was not much to do. So I had a friend with a car. He had a Volkswagen Jetta, and we went on these long drives where we would start playing this game called Left or Right. And it was after we would smoke a bowl, and we would just play the game of going to a stop sign, and somebody would choose left or right. And that night we ended up deciding to go and do some reconnaissance on this area that was known to be haunted. He had a cassette tape of Dead Set. And so I remember listening to Samson and Delilah, New Minglewood Blues, But it was honestly the space into Fire on the Mountain that just like doors opened, walls came crumbling down, and that was just like, okay, what is this and how do I get more? So from there, it was anytime I was renting a car, it had the perks of having XM Sirius radio and having long drives and be able to hear an entire set or a whole show was kind of foreign to me, because really my entry into the Dead was a lot of studio albums. And I feel like in sort of my generation of coming into the Dead, tape culture was not something that was as accessible. I mean, it's something that I had to seek out a tape player and find somebody whose dad had an active collection. So it really was kind of just filling in the gaps of truly finding the Dead through places that had meaning to me, places that I had lived, venues that I had gone and seen shows myself. And I'm a very sort of sensory person. I actually studied wine for a long time. And so a lot of the geography of the world that I know is through studying wine in that context. And so I find listening to the Dead does a similar thing to my brain, where I've heard people describe like there's a sound to like the space between notes, and there's a feeling or a weight or a sound to like the air that a room can hold. And so part of me has been connecting the dots of shows and places that I've had boots on the ground, and then trying to insert like the Dead's music in that space. So it's both like my lived experiences, places that I've been, as well as like following this breadcrumb trail of the tracings of the Dead all around the world and places that have meaning to me. I mean, with that said, I have some sort of oddball favorite shows, but they're all places that I have lived experience in. So Rio Neato or Cortland, New York, or I really like the City Island shows of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in 83, 84. Again, a place that I used to go and see minor league baseball as a kid and fireworks that like there's some cool Dead music to be discovered there. So that's my story.
Could you tell us more about the context in which you were into wine? I'm intrigued.
Oh, sure. Again, I went to high school outside of in York County, Pennsylvania, but my mom's family has roots both here on the West Coast in California and in San Francisco area, but also in Corning, New York. So the first job that I ever had in wine was when I was 19 years old, which in the state of New York, you only had to be 19 at the time to serve. And so I was working at a winery up in the Finger Lakes. Just knew nothing about wine, but I was given tours when I was 19 and telling folks how wine was made, and then selling people cases of wine hand over fist and taking carts out to their car and loading up wine. And I couldn't even drink the stuff. From there, I decided to go to school for a hospitality business degree, and I took a job the day after college to move out here to the West Coast and start working in wine in Sonoma County. So I've done everything from making wine, selling wine, importing wine, studying wine as like a sommelier and in a restaurant context. Like I said, I'm a very sort of sensory-driven person, so it's smells, it's taste, it's the sound of, like I said, trying to put shows together and the sense of place that Grateful Dead music can have through taping culture.
Do you know the Katoris?
Yeah.
Out there in Phil? Yeah, I mean, they're big Deadheads.
For
Huge.
sure.
From the from way back. Didn't Phil's son do a show?
Yeah.
He did. Yeah.
And now I go to 16600 all the time. Michael, do you have wine pairings at Providence?
Of course we do.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
When you're making the menu, do you think about it, or is that like down the road? You can't think that far in advance.
No, but a step in the process is always involving our sommelier team to come and taste the dish before it hits the menu so they can pick an appropriate pairing. Always.
Cool. Tom, you could sell me a case of wine, man. I'd buy whatever you're selling. I'd buy a used car. I'd buy a case of wine, whatever. So Tom is 6 years off. Matt is 5 years off. Drane is 7 years off. Let's hear the third track.
Stallions up.
Beat It On Down the Line at Fillmore East, New York, April 26th, 1971. A beautiful pick, Michael. Tell us about it.
Picked it for two reasons. Number one, when I first moved to New York City when I was a kid, I lived just 2 blocks from the location of the Fillmore East. Of course, it was long closed, but I have a lot of fond memories of that neighborhood. On the East Village is on 6th Street on 2nd Avenue, and I lived on 6 between A and B when I was a kid, living in the city, and just love it. And I could almost picture the energy around that building, when people like the Dead or the Allman Brothers or Jimi Hendrix or you name it played there. So indeed, this track features Duane Allman of the Allman Brothers playing slide guitar. And, if I had to pick my favorite band after the Dead, it would certainly be the Allman Brothers. Of course, I never got to see Duane play live, but he's, just an absolutely incredible player. And I think the way that he was able to just sit in with the Grateful Dead and it was just so seamless. Jerry had his beautiful little solo there. And then, Duane takes over and puts together this incredible slide solo. That track could have been Skull and Roses, right? I mean, it sounds so much like the Beat It On Down the Lines on that. That era is just so incredible. I absolutely love it. And having Duane playing on that track just makes it all the better.
Well, Drane, who's from Georgia, the only Southerner on the in the contest, was the only one who got it. 71. Do you know what was going on there, Drane?
I was so confused until I heard Duane, and then I knew all about it, and I was like, "Yep."
Well, that was a nice pull, Drane.
Thank you.
The next closest was Matt, 73.
Just wrong Dwayne show.
Yep.
I was thinking it was RFK.
Oh, and there is a Beat It On Down the Line, and yeah. How would you characterize the guitar that was like clearly Duane?
I would say smoother than Jerry, and Jerry sounds to me more like fractals and spirals, than the gliding sounds of Duane, which I love both.
Tom, 76.
So unlike your other two guests here who nailed it as Duane, I was in confusion land of where this guitar tone was. And this is a good lesson that I need to listen to both this show and the 73 RFK that you've just mentioned. Again, in the way I listened, it was like trying to feel the space and the energy and just the confidence that I heard on that song. To me, it just had that sort of what I equate to like that bicentennial era, just energy that I find in some of the music. So yeah, a swing and a miss on that one.
Cool. Drane, how'd you get into the Dead?
So I'm trying to think. I mean, that's many, many brain cells ago. When I was very young, I was able to remember details of things from the time I was about 2 years old. I remember the Grateful Dead on the radio and liking it. At some point in time, around 8 years old, they gave me this huge headphones that had the antenna in it, and you could tune the radio. That's all you could get is just the radio, And this thing just like eclipsed my head. I still don't even have a very large head now at my age, but at that time, it was just like all headphone. So the King Biscuit Flower Hour comes on one evening when I'm trying to, get something to listen to fall asleep. And I'm pretty sure I've kind of had to figure it out, but I'm pretty sure it was the Barton Hall show based on the song selection. And hearing that on those earphones like that just blew me away. And over time, I started putting it together at my age, the MTV generation and all that. The Dead started kind of coming around, 96 Rock and some other stations around here started playing them, usually late at night or whatever. And then they kind of, I don't know, disappeared in a way because, Michael Jackson and Eddie Van Halen and all these guys are coming around. And so I just kind of get into that pop culture for a minute and then hit 16 and, what happens, And so a friend of mine leaves Skeletons in the Closet in the tape player or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I remember all this. And then I go home and turn on MTV and they got Jerry. And then like that weekend, the Tom Snyder thing was on and I get to see all of them talking. And I'm like, man, this is great. These guys are old as shit and they are like having a blast, and everybody's digging them. And then about 9 or 10 months later, In the Dark hit. And then everybody, and I mean everybody, became a deadhead all of a sudden. And so I went to go check it out when I was in the high school years there, but I didn't get in. But I saw the scene and all that. And then I went to college and I started getting, introduced to more stuff like Bear's Choice had come out. And a buddy of mine had an older brother who was like 8 years older. So he had Blues for Allah, and he snaked his CD and Live from the Mars Hotel. And then I start buying CDs. And then I go see them in 92 was my first show, April. And they opened up a Shakedown Street, which I had just heard the disco version, like, I don't know, a week or two before. And man, it ripped, man. It ripped a hole in the Omni. I mean, the opening notes and that fill bass just reverberated. And ran into some buddies at the set break, and they came up where I was, and we heard that the last Steer It Up jam, and I mean, and then it just like almost went straight to like Skull and Roses with the end there. And then Quinn the Eskimo was the encore. And I mean, I was just blown away. I was completely blown away. And I said, I'm going to do this as much as I possibly can. And I know Jerry's probably not long for this earth. So I went and saw him 20 more times after that.
That's awesome, Drane. Thank you. You have 7 years off. Matt also has 7. Tom has 11. Good game here. Let's hear Michael's 4th pick.
Pistol shot, 5 o'clock, the bells of heaven ring.
Eyes of the World into China Doll at Winterland, San Francisco on November 11th, 1973. How long have you known about this transition, Michael?
Well, I have to thank a friend for the recommendation on this. I called in a ringer, and his name is David Lemieux.
Oh,
That's helpful.
I knew I wanted to put a China Doll in here, even though it's like it's not a fan favorite, I don't think, but it was my father's favorite Dead song. And when I was a kid and I was really into taping culture, I would find shows that had China Dolls, and then I would make him like compilation tapes and send him a tape of just China Dolls from whatever I could find. And I guess this is probably the period, like maybe parts of the Wall of Sound were there, but not all of the Wall of Sound were there. And I think you can hear that in the recording. it sounds like, it sounds like the music from the Grateful Dead movie to me. I just think that the sound that they were able to create with just two guitars, a bass, a drummer, and a keyboard player is absolutely remarkable. And I can't think of another band that was able to just flow through space and time and create music like this and be just so perfectly in tune. And the way that incredible jam coming out of Eyes of the World, which is, by the way, one of my that spontaneous kind of like composition that became something that they played on over and over again, at least in that era, at the ending of Eyes of the World, is one of the most, I think, compelling pieces of music the Grateful Dead ever put together. And then the fact that Jerry just kind of like gave it this just incredible soft landing into China Doll, and everyone instantaneously just fell in behind him, is just absolutely remarkable. Like the whole idea of like hive mind and, five fingers on a hand, as Phil likes to describe their interplay. I don't know, the level of fluency that they have with their own instruments and the way that they weave them together just never ceases to blow my mind.
When you embarked on your culinary career, did your dad understand what you were going for?
No. No, I mean, he was no, he was not. My father was a scientist, so like a chemist. Not the Owsley type of chemist, but a chemist. He was working in a more structured environment, let's say. But yeah, I mean, no, not really. But he was down for whatever I wanted to do, and incredibly supportive, and that's a big part of why I'm here today. His inspiration, his influence, and quite frankly, I don't know who got who into the Dead. I don't know if it was he got me into them or I got him into them. I don't quite remember, but I do know that it's something that we shared very deeply, and something that he loved, and we would go to shows together in various. I mean, I would be in various states of impairment. He was not, but but it was just awesome,
Isn't there like a ton of chemistry in cooking too? Like it's not that big of a departure from what your dad did.
I mean, to a degree, yes. I mean, and I know, like I said, I know plenty of cooks that are big deadheads. As a matter of fact, one of the other judges, the other judge on America's Culinary Cup, Wiley Dufresne of the world famous WD-50, is a big time deadhead. Went to school, I think, at Colby up in Maine, and so he saw some incredible shows up and down the East Coast. And that was something when we were filming that show, we talked about the Dead constantly.
I watched the first episode. Did you find shooting that? I'm sure it's different for you being on TV and stuff. Did you enjoy the process of filming that and also just judging other cooks, chefs in front of them?
Yes, I mean, I'll tell you what I do. What I enjoy and how I try to infuse that in the show was the idea of like mentorship. Because I feel like all those people, the chefs that are competing on the show, are very well accomplished. But I'm 20 years older than all of them at the very least. You know what I mean? So I probably have at least one or two things that I can impart to, folks, even though they are incredibly accomplished, but, they're, I know a thing or two. And so, I mean, we can talk about, the work that they've done, and I want to be kind in everything that I do. And that includes judging, on that show. But I also think like, if I've got an idea or a thought that might help them somehow in some minute way, then I find it, it's a privilege to share it. So yeah, I mean, it's very different. Like, I'm not a TV person. I mean, definitely have a face made for radio, but when I was asked to do it, it was a great honor. And I did enjoy it, in spite of the fact that I've, never spent that much time in hair and makeup in my life for any reason. But whatever, you get used to things.
Especially after the third Michelin star and you're on TV and stuff. Is being a celebrity something you worry about or have any trepidation
No.
about? Or like,
No, I'm not. Well, first of all, I mean, I'm in no danger of that happening. I don't think.
Okay.
It's just like, dude, I mean, if I wasn't here, if it were a Tuesday, I would be doing this from the line, cooking. You know what I mean? So like, we're closed on Mondays, so which is when we're recording this, but most of the time I'm cooking. So I mean, it's not that I'm in danger of like getting a big head from all this or anything, but at heart, I'm still just a cook, and that's what I love to do most. And so, you'll find me behind the line most night, Tuesday through Saturday, I'll be cooking somewhere. So,
But I mean, a lot of times, like comedians become so big at stand-up comedy that they stop doing comedy. Chefs become so popular that they stop working on the line.
yeah.
Is that something you would ever submit to?
I mean, staying on the line, like I'm not actually working a station, but I'm
Yeah.
cooking alongside the cooks. Uh, it's what I do. And also it's what it's what I get paid to do. Just like, whatever. Bob gets paid to play rhythm guitar. Like you would never ask a musician, like, you ever think you're going to get so busy you don't play, rhythm guitar anymore? And like, no, I mean, I'm a cook, so I cook. I think that's true of, so there's a lot of people that, find themselves in a similar position to where I am that are still cooking. I mean, somebody that I know used to work for Nancy at Mozart. Nancy still cooks. I do events with her all the time and she still cooks. I mean, whatever. I'm old school. I like to cook, so that's what I do. And we listen to music while we're cooking. I mean, not during service, but I'm always playing the Grateful Dead. There's all sorts of kids that work in the kitchen that they probably never would have heard the Dead were it not for me.
Another really fabulous pick. Shout out Dave as well for the assist. Great ringer to have in the back pocket. Matt got it exactly 73. Really nice, Matt. Can you tell us how you figured that one out?
Well, I would have said 74 if you didn't include the segue, and the segue gave it away because that's a very rare segue. Like you were saying, like you could sort of hear the wall of sound, and I was like, from the tone of it, I was feeling the movie. But then the China doll comes, and I'm like, okay, I don't think there's any that are not in 73 that go like that.
Nice pull. Drane was 1 year off, 74.
I really thought that cool, bouncy transition that Phil did, I thought that was a total just 74 thing, and I kind of thought maybe they're gonna fool me with a December 73, so maybe I should do that, but I could swear I heard some kind of clicking in underneath it that made me kind of feel like maybe the movie was going. I don't know.
Tom, 78.
First off, I want to give a nod to just the knowledge of the folks that are on this panel. It's ironic too because in sort of doing a little bit of homework for this show, Mike, I was listening to a episode that you had where there's this conversation of 73, 74 China dolls, and then whoever your guest is at the time also makes the case that 90 is another year where you get these phenomenal China dolls. So I've been doing some China doll listening here in the last week or so, but I like I said, I had 74 on my paper, and then just the way that I heard the movement of things, and it just slipped and got away from me. So, but a nod to these guys that really know their stuff.
You know your stuff too. Matt, how'd you get into the Dead?
That's a good question. I grew up with music in the house, but my mom, even though she had like great records like The Band and Santana and the just another band from L.A., the Zappa, The Mothers Live. She didn't have too much Grateful Dead in the house, but she got me out to summer camp. And so my camp counselors, we used to have dining room sing in Camp Luema in Sussex, New Jersey. And I'm so thankful to my mom for getting me out of the city because I'm from a place called Far Rockaway, which is it's a tough little town for a little Jewish white guy. And the counselors taught us Iko Iko. And we would sing it in dining rooms, sing. And then, like, I mean, I was firm on my Zeppelin and my Floyd. And, like I knew about some rock and roll that I liked, But then I heard that one of their bootlegs, man, in the bunk, one of the counselors had a bootleg. And it just caught me out there. And I wish I could to this day remember if it was a China Rider jam or a playing in the band jam. But something happened to me in like my mind, like when they break down, because I'm like a space guy. Like like my favorite part of the show is space, and the segues and stuff like that. So I owe it all to the camp. I was also pretty poor, so I would be at home in Far Rockaway, and I would call the phone number for mail order, like full well knowing that I ain't getting no mail orders, like that I can't afford this. But I just wanted to be in the loop. Like, I just wanted to know. They said no metered strips. Like they said this stuff, and I listened, and I wrote down all the dates of the shows, and I knew I wasn't going to make it to even one show. But I was like, I'll check it out. And then I would listen to David Gans on the radio and just start getting as many cassettes as I could get my hands on. And finally, when I got to SUNY Purchase in Westchester, New York, for my freshman year of college, my roommate, Mike Halloran, he was a big Bruce Springsteen fan, and he miracled me. He miracled me into my first show, 9/22/88, and then I got a credit card, and I started just getting out. I got to 21 shows from 9/22/88 on, through RFK with Dylan, and that last summer. But I made it to a few. I even made it to two Jerry Garcia band shows, which sure wish I would have made it to a couple more of those. But um, yeah, I just loved it from the moment, that it just did something special to me where, I wasn't always the biggest fan of reality, and it was just such a nice way of taking a little break. There was no problems once you get lost in the jam. So
Matt, you do a radio show and you recently interviewed TC.
Tom Constant was so generous with his time. He met me on a platform just like this we use at our show. Yeah, my show is called, well, originally it was The Healing Effect and Power of Music, where I would just talk to people who do ecstatic dance, or like a doula, like a death doula, or a sound healer. I went on Fish Lot one day and I just went around with a little Zoom recorder, and I'm like, hey, can you tell me what's your experience with the healing effect and the power of music? And the show evolved into this thing where it's called The Ultimate Mixtape. But I spent some time with TC. He taught me a lot about Bach, Beethoven, and what rebels they were. And he was just so generous. And I made a sound collage, and we were talking about John Cage and some of his early stuff before Grateful Dead. And you can hear some of his early music on that episode.
Thank you, Matt. You're in the lead. You have 7. So if you get it right, you win. Drane has 8. Tom has 16. One more track. Let's hear Michael's 5th pick. Estimated profit, Hershey Park Stadium, Hershey, Pennsylvania, on June 28, 1985. Michael.
First of all, I was there. It was like a couple days after school let out. My sister had just gotten her driver's license, and my mother, for some reason, let us drive whatever it was, like 7 hours to Hershey Park to go see that show. I just bought a new copy of Blues for Allah because I worn out the old one. So I cut out the shape of the art on the front cover of Blues for Allah, taped it to the side of my car, and we drove 7 hours from home to see that show. It was cold. It was rainy. They opened with cold rain and snow. It was a crazy little outdoor venue, all general admission, tons of Hells Angels, we got right up in front. And I remember seeing, like, before the band came out, like, you'd see Big Steve, Jerry, Phil, Bob, and the drummers just pass around a big fat joint behind the speakers. And then, I mean, the show was just incredible. And I got a hold of, like, maybe the best weed I'd ever smoked. Being 15 from suburban New Jersey, we didn't have the best marijuana available to us at that time. And I got a hold of some real, like, California, Sensimilia at that show, and it knocked me out, like, completely knocked me out. And also some incredible mushrooms. But anyway, that estimated, I mean, it's just incredible. That whole show, there's an incredible terrapin on that show. There's a morning dew on that show. Just like Tom Thumb Blues, Phil sang, which was, like, incredible. That's one of my favorite and probably the best outdoor show that I ever saw. Certainly the smallest outdoor show I ever saw, because most of the other shows that I saw being, from the East Coast would be, were larger venues like JFK, RFK, Giant Stadium, things like that. It was great. It was just great.
You mentioned that weed's effect on the dead. What is weed's effect on fine dining level food? Can you find the right balance, or they should not be mixed?
I really I couldn't tell you, because I never, for me, I never mixed that, with work. Well, I mean, I really don't even smoke weed anymore. But I don't know. That's a good question. The thing I'd be worried about would be my palate after smoking, because I couldn't tell you what effect that has on your palate.
I mean, if it makes everyone just, like, want Oreos and stuff, maybe it wouldn't, like.
Oh, well, we get lots of high people that come to the restaurant. Like, sometimes people will go out, like, at a multi-course meal in between courses and smoke a joint, like, 20 feet from the front door of the restaurant. And then you could just smell it all through the restaurant. So I hope they enjoy it. I mean, my guess would be that they enjoy it once they come back. Who knows? Maybe it lights up your palate. I couldn't tell you.
And that's not a faux pas, even at the 3-star
No, what do I care, man? I mean, it's like, honestly, like, that's the thing about Providence. It's always been what it is. And, and we're not trying to be anything other than ourselves, myself, my partners. My wife's a big part of the restaurant. My partner, Donato, we just want you to come and have a good time and enjoy what we're doing. And as long as you're into that, then that's great. But we're not into pretense or making people feel any sort of way about walking through the front door. We want people to feel comfortable and cared for when they come to see us. That's really our biggest goal.
Do you play music?
Yes, we do. I mean, usually we play like pop, like 80s pop and that kind of thing. Or like sometimes I'll play more like Americana type music. I'm in what I like to refer to as a mixed marriage. That is to say, I'm a big Deadhead and my wife can't stand them. I mean, my wife has incredible taste in music. She just doesn't like the Dead. But we play all sorts of stuff. I mean, you could come there and hear The Cure, or you might hear Wilco, or you might hear Nick Cave, or God only knows. We play all sorts of stuff. It just kind of depends on the mood.
But you guys do decide it. It's not like some third-party service.
No. Yeah, we decide.
Cool.
What I can't stand is when you walk in a restaurant and you hear like elevator music or like, like smooth jazz. Oh my God. I'm just like, I get like hives when I hear that shit. It just drives me crazy.
Well, it was a photo finish, but I'm going to make everyone wait a little longer. Michael, you've kind of given us pieces of the story, but how did you get into the Dead?
My father was a big music fan, especially like 60s, late 60s and 70s music and rock and roll, and he had this thing where he'd like go buy an album, play it once, record it when he was playing it, and then put the albums away, never play the albums again. So all sorts of incredible vinyl. And then, when I started getting into music, I would listen, I'd sit in the back seat and hear whatever he was playing in the car or whatever he was playing in the house. So music was a huge part of my life. And I drifted into the Grateful Dead's world in, I think it was like 1982 or something like that, when I first got Skeletons from the Closet, which seems to be the gateway drug for everyone, because everyone's mentioned that album at least once. That you hear it every guest of the year, it seems. But that was the first album that I bought of the Dead, and then just fell down this incredibly deep rabbit hole that I've just been continue to go down for the last 45 years of my life. I mean, I started going to see him, like I said, in 84, was brought by a family friend. When I think I was 14 the first time I saw him, and I saw, I don't know how many shows between 84 and 1990 when I stopped going. I stopped going to show because the scene got really weird, I think, especially on I'm sure on the West Coast it was probably a very different thing, but on the East Coast, especially the places where I would see the most, like, Philadelphia, like the Spectrum in Philly or Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey. And then the big stadiums on the East Coast, the scene just got really weird. It just didn't feel like it did when I first started going to see them. And plus my life just got busier and I just sort of, stopped going to see them in 1990. I did see some Jerry Band shows after that, but not the Grateful Dead after 90. Really after Brent died, I was just like kind of done with it. But I never stopped loving the music and I listen to it pretty much every day. I don't know, it's just such a comfortable thing to be, put on any kind of Dead show or a Dead album. The music to me is just so profound and the lyrics are so profound. Even though Hunter and, John Perry Barlow really don't want to talk about what they ever meant writing those lyrics, but I think what draws so many people into the music is the lyrics themselves and whatever it is that you're able to make of them. And certainly that's a big part of it for me. And of course, just the fact that they are a band that from 65 to 95 just never stopped chasing it. And there's something in that I find incredibly inspiring. And, and I've used it to kind of like that example to kind of like pattern my own life. I feel like they kept playing because I always felt like there was something out there that they hadn't quite achieved yet, or they hadn't quite, some place where they hadn't quite reached. And I feel exactly the same way. Like I tell our team all the time at the restaurant that I feel like our best work is still in front of us. And I feel like they must have felt that same way. Otherwise, I wouldn't have kept going for those 30 years because God knows they could have quit whenever they, especially after the touch of gray years, they could have hung it up, if they wanted to. But they just kept going because they were just chasing the muse. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Even going to see Dead and Company, I mean, towards the end of their run and those last 3 shows that they did in the park, just unbelievable. And it's such a huge loss for the world that Bob is no longer with us. That really shook me. I mean, losing Phil shook me, losing Bob shook me. It's just like, I believe this music will continue to, evolve, continue to change, and that there are always new people coming into the scene. And I feel like someone's going to pick up that mantle and run with it. And, as Bob said, he wanted to create a legacy for this music that would last 300 years. And I feel like, they're 1/6 the way there right now. So I think that goal will most likely be achieved, and the Grateful Dead will indeed be an important band, a benchmark kind of band. There's never been another band like them, and there never probably will be. But people will be listening to this music for a very, very long time. I'm just so pleased that I was on this planet at the same time that they were.
Especially for that estimated profit.
Oh my God, man!
It seems like Bob has handed off the Dead's legacy to John in some ways, and I'm a big fan of Dead and Company too. Are restaurants something that can survive being handed off to proteges?
I think so. I mean, people, I have friends in this business that are, a little older than I am that are thinking about those very questions right now. I know my kids aren't going to take over the restaurant because my kids have no interest. I mean, they love food. They should be Michelin inspectors, but my 2 kids, but they're not going to take over the restaurant, So, my wife and I, we definitely have some thinking to do. I would love to see it continue past the time when I decide to like hang up the apron for the last time. But, I don't know. I do believe that, you look at a restaurant like Chez Panisse, it's been there for whatever, 1971, Berkeley, they opened. So yeah, I think it's possible. I just went to Peter Luger in Brooklyn. I mean, that's 1926, I think they opened or something like that, or 1916, whatever it was. I mean, it's been through 2 world wars. I mean, however many generations of owners, and, they're still humming, and it's still wonderful. So
I was just at Chez Panisse like a couple months ago. It still slaps.
How'd you like it?
It was great.
Still great. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. I went at like
Yeah.
11:30 a.m. too. It was still like amazing.
But places like that, like you walk in and you get that feeling. You know what I mean? Like there's something about them. They're magical spaces.
Thank you, Michael. Lovely picks. You ended with a real barn burner there, and these guys were fooled. The closest was Drane. He guessed 89. Tom guessed 90, and Matt guessed 91. So Drane wins 12,
Oh,
being the
wow.
lowest. Matt had 13. Drane.
Gosh, man, I was just like, this has got to be like, I hear MIDI. I know he's playing around with it, as soon as like 85 or whatever, but it just, I don't know. I thought there were a lot of kind of tired shows in 85. Like the second half and the first half, everything was like super fast. Like you can tell a lot of Eyes of the Worlds, they're so jumpy, just bouncy, bouncy. And I was like, it just doesn't feel like that early. And I put 91 and I erased it and put 90. And then I erased it again and put 89. So I don't know why I did that, but I did. So I'm glad I did that.
Tom, you guessed 90. What were you hearing?
Like Drane described, I put this later on. I was doing the battle of, is this 89 or is this 90? But I'm just kicking myself because, Michael, you couldn't have picked a show closer to my backyard of where I grew up. My sister and I would go to Hershey Park on the last day of school every year when we were in grade school. It was the first day of summer. We would get out of school and we'd go ride the rides at Hershey Park. And even still, like, it's a place that I've seen shows. And again, how I introduce, like, how I listen to Dead tapes is like through the places that I have tight personal connection to, places I've seen music, places that I've like lived and put boots on the ground. And two, like, as it sort of evolves into that place and that feeling that that something has happened in that space. My dad and I used to go to, they were called Hershey Bears. They're the AHL minor league hockey team that's affiliated with Hershey. And they used to play at the old, I guess it's like the Hershey Coliseum, which is actually the same place where Wilt Chamberlain dropped his 100-point game playing for the Philadelphia Warriors. A game that was never broadcast on television, that there's only like brief like radio snippets that put that place and that event like in that time and place. But again, when I was a kid, you walked into that building and again, it had that feeling like something magical has happened in this space. And two, it's like, it's something for me growing up as a kid. Like my parents were kind of history buffs. So we would go to all these places around the Northeast and the same thing too. Like I remember like walking into like the Ford Theater and it still carries like the weight of like what happened in this building. So again, for that to be your first show and for you to bring it all back around to like literally doorsteps of where I grew up, it's the first thing I'm going to listen to when we're off this call.
It's a good one.
And Matt, 91.
I'm kicking myself in the butt because at first glance, first listen, I'm like, okay, 86. It just had that Jerry, that bwomp, to it, like some kind of whatever. I don't know the name of the envelope or whatever, but, you can hear in the eras the different effects, right? And that's my first thought. But then I'm listening too careful and getting up in my head and I'm like trying to hear Brent, man. I'm trying to hear Brent so hard in it. I can't hear Brent. And I'm like, but Brent's more aggressive than that. And so I'm thinking maybe this is some early Vince. And that's why specifically I went with 91, because I'm thinking this is, like Vince just getting used to it and Jerry hearkening back to that mid 80s. And it was just and by the way, is that 628 the day of that?
Mm-hmm.
I love that version of Tom Thumbs from that show.
Yeah, it's great. I have a picture of Bob Minkin, who also he created a playlist for you. But I have a big photo of Jerry from that show, from the Hershey Park show, in my office that is like right in front of my exercise bike. So when I ride my bike every morning, usually watching Dead shows, I'm looking at Jerry.
Thank you guys. That was really impressive to watch and enjoyable to listen to all your commentary and stories. And Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to do it. Brilliant selections.
Huge honor. Thanks, Mike.
Hey now, thank you for listening. For the link to our Instagram and YouTube channel, check the show notes. And if you want to be a contestant on the show, sponsor the show, or make comments and ask questions, email us at info@guesttheyear.net. Shout out to Peter Osta for the new cover art you're enjoying. And thanks to Jack, Dylan, and James for helping out behind the scenes. Thank you, Michael, for a tremendous set list. To all the contestants, bravo. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks to the amazing tapers whose recordings made this show possible. Congratulations to Drane and the Big W. And to other contestants, thanks for playing. And remember, it's all one song anyway.
And I bid you good night, good night, good night. And I bid you good night, good night, good night.